Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everyone out on the intertubes, this is the brand new Wealth Through Health podcast. I'm Deane, and Johannes is here to share with us the ins and outs of his journey, how he's created an incredible movement of self-healing, reconnection for men and women here in Australia, integrating breath work, integrating mindset, integrating health philosophies. He's someone that I've met through my community in Manly in New South Wales and Sydney for about 4 years now. He was there when we were both building communities at the same time, and we've just been brothers in arms. And recently we're able to travel to Byron Bay together and expand with some brothers for a friend's wedding. And it's been amazing seeing Johannes just transform into this incredible facilitator who's holding space for mental health challenges, for leadership challenges within people, for people to express themselves and really step up. And who else? When I thought of who would I like to interview, I was like, there's no one better than my brother Johannes right here. And I'm so excited for you to share the ins and outs of what we're going to go through. And so I'd love to just start off with I want to know where you began. Take us back to the beginning. What was it like for you growing up? And can you paint that picture for us? Because you've pretty much traveled timelines and pretty much created your ideal life. And it's been really inspiring to see. But I want to know where you've really come from.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the question. Appreciate the interest. So I grew up in the Netherlands, where I lived until about the age of 16. So when I was quite young, my dad actually worked for the church. He still does today. He's a pastor or a reverend. And part of that was that you would work for these different communities, which meant that every 4 or 5 years or so, we would move. So we'd move town and move community, and the church would provide, a different home. And one memory that's very vivid to me, and sorry to start off, this might seem a bit heavy or a bit dark, but I'm happy to just go deep into sharing a few things here. But I must have been about 7 old, and I'm living in this tiny little village in the Netherlands, right? And everything seems idyllic at the time. There's these sort of quintessential windmills flowing along the river, and there's about 700 people living in this village. It's very, very small. But my dad was actually quite abusive when I was young. So there was a lot of domestic violence and just a lot of fear for me as a young kid. And there was one particular moment that I recall when I was about 7 years old, where things just went too far and it was just too much for me. And I think that what happened in that moment is that, the little kid, the little boy that I was, or my body decided that I couldn't deal with what was happening anymore. So I became very good at sort of leaving my body, if you will. I became very good at disassociating and just leaving the realm of experience so that I could, not store memory, and I could just numb myself to this point. But what happened within that is that, I became a little bit more numb to the world around me. I became a little bit more protected. My walls went up, if you will, and it was necessary at the time. However, there was a result to that as well, which was really that the world started to lose its color. So all my memories up to these of 7, 8 years old were like a world of technicolor, right? Where there's a lot of interaction with nature, and it just seems like the world is a vibrant, safe, harmless place, right? Whereas moving forward from that moment on, it almost seemed like sort of the world started to dampen around me, and everything went to a bit more of a grayscale sort of service. My parents ended up separating, and things are much better now. But at the time, there was a lot of strife to sort of get away and start a new life. And there was financial difficulty. So we moved every year or every 2 years for a while. So I was constantly changing schools as a kid, and I was constantly changing environments. And I think that the result of that for me was that I had a lot of difficulty self-regulating, and a lot of difficulty, again, kind of being in my body and being with really the underlying pain that was there. And I didn't really know how to share different parts of that. And at about age, say 12 or 13, I was diagnosed with ADD, which is like attention deficit disorder, and quite heavily medicated at the time as well, which kind of came with that through, just the way that the phonological system was set up through psychiatrists as a young kid and things like that. And I quite quickly turned away from all that. So come like age 14, 15, I became a bit of a rebel. And yeah, the rest is history. There was a period there where I just rebelled and I just said no against every single system around me, really sort of feeding this patriarchal wound, if you will. But as soon as I turned about 16 and I had a bit more freedom, I discovered traveling, and I discovered that the world was much larger than what I thought it was at first. There was much more for me to experience. And yeah, eventually it brought me to Australia. I actually moved here pretty much the day I turned 18, the day that I could. I applied for a visa. It got granted, and I was on a plane a week later. I was €1,000 in debt, actually. It was just this moment of like, fuck it, man, not much more to lose. And yeah, I came out here, and I would have met you about 5 years into the journey, I think. 5 years of living here, working hard, trying to get by, going through the stresses of immigrating and just day-to-day life, really. But I do remember that as a light point is meeting you and meeting the community, and it's really where things started to accelerate. It seemed that I didn't have to work so hard to get the same results, and it just went up and up and up and up and up. And there's moments like last week in Byron Bay, like you just mentioned, the moments when I'm standing there, I'm pinching myself and going, "Is this real? Does it get any better?" But it seems to just be on a rise. I hope that gives a little bit of background.
It does, man. And I had no idea that you pretty much, you jumped countries to come out here. I guess you were following your voice or following that calling, and whatever it was, you've been able to create this beautiful community of, hundreds of people literally coming to your events, packing out events in Sydney. This was before COVID, and then pivoting towards, doing retreats and taking people, everyday people into the wild, into, I think it was Jindabyne, out into the snow, doing breath work, cold exposure, and confronting people's fears and traumas and helping them heal. And so tell us a bit more about these experiences, and what type of transformations do people usually have when they're on these experiences with you? Because I really want to understand your understanding of your understanding of health and your understanding of healing, and how this all comes together within your work.
Absolutely. I'll start with this. There's something that I started saying a few years back when I was working with a guy called Wim Hof, right? And he's hard to miss these days. So I trained under him 3-4 years ago, and I became like an ambassador for his method, and ended up teaching thousands of people actually here in Australia, Japan, and New Zealand. So it was a very, very, very exciting journey. But the interesting thing around the Wim Hof method, which consists of doing breath work, exposing yourself to cold temperatures, right? So I call it more like connection to nature, but it's usually jumping in ice baths or going out and seeking out these kind of cold, extreme environments. And the third thing is mindset, right? So that's quite a sort of approachable technique for people, which gave me like access to a lot of healing myself, but also to like a very wide range community of people that were very interested in this opportunity to teach at like quite a large level. But the thing that the Wim Hof method kind of brought about to the world at the time, and what was so interesting, is that research was done that showed that through these breathing techniques, people can lower their inflammatory levels, right? So they can lower levels of chronic inflammation or acute inflammation in their bodies simply by using something as simple as a breathing technique. So there's no real intervention required. And that was just fascinating. And it helped me so much. It helped me get rid of like stagnant issues physically, also emotionally, and helped me connect deeper on a spiritual level eventually down the line as well. But I became really fascinated and almost obsessed with like, how does this work, right? What are the underlying like systems that are being affected, and how does this all come into play? Like, why is it that a breathing technique can have such transformative effects on people? And it so the thing I wanted to sort of state earlier was that underneath all the different breathing techniques that I teach now, and underneath the way that we do it, so it's become a really exciting movement where, as you mentioned, this last winter we've run 10 of these expeditions where we take groups of people out into the snowy mountains, and we teach them to use or to harness like the power of breathing and kind of mind over body control to do these really quite quite intense physical challenges. So hiking up mountains for hours at a time in nothing but a pair of shorts. We've hiked through blizzards, snowstorms, like extreme weather, and going into the backcountry of the Australian snowy mountains, or swimming in these ice cold rivers and waterfalls, and really just exposing oneself voluntarily to these extreme conditions, right? But we do it as a group. So we do it really like with a tight knit group of humans. And the biggest lessons that come out of it for me are usually not so much to do with like the extremes and with like the big realizations of, wow, the body is capable of so much more, when we allow it to go through challenges like this. But it lies more within the kind of underpinning thing that's always there, that is like, we have to do it together. And that strength for humans really comes in groups. And also trailing back then, like the answers for me and my own perhaps health journey, if you will, has really been that I need human connection around me in order to be healthy, right? So the quote I started using was that isolation causes inflammation, right? And time again, people would come through these workshops, and there's quite a deep level of sharing that we sort of like encourage, right? We encourage people to open up, to speak, and to share a little bit more than what's on the surface. And usually when you look underneath, you see that humans kind of struggle with the same issues, right? There's the more personal something like feels to someone, the more universal it actually applies. And I think the key point for us has been to really realize that like the biggest gift that we have is that we can bring human beings together, right? In these safe and in these uplifting environments. And that seems to be where healing happens, right? And it seems to sometimes be the only thing that's required. It's just that we come together. And yeah, so I like to sometimes say that, underneath the facade of teaching people how to breathe and organizing these cool experiences. And these days it's either taking people like up mountains or teaching these intensive workshops in all these different environments, or also teaching freediving. So taking people, like teaching them how to use their breathing to get to the bottoms of the ocean and really kind of untangling how the physical body works and how it's meant to interact with nature. But again, what's underneath it all is that I'm just trying to create a little bit more human connection. And what I've come to find personally is that, like, remember the little kid that lived in a world of Technicolor? The times I feel most connected to that kid is the times I feel most safe in a supportive group of humans, right? And it's most of the time, it's not really to do with what we're doing or where we are. It's to do with a supportive, safe environment where we can all be seen and where we really bring each other together. And that's when the little boy with me is most happy. And that's when I actually feel healthiest, right? It seems to be when all the little issues that I experience, they just disappear and everything just seems to work. All the systems just seems to align. And so I'm striving to create more color in my life. And I happen to have this amazing vehicle now of Breathless, which is the company that I run where we create these experiences. But I think the thing that keeps people coming back and the thing that sort of drives it all underneath is this need for genuine human connection.
And gosh, I think what I've learned throughout my journey is, as I've learned to connect with myself, it's then a reflection of then holding space for others. And what I met you when you were not doing these events, you were not holding space for others. I think you were doing metal work and so there was a time where you've transitioned from literally working on your own by yourself, isolated, and to then transitioning into then holding space for hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands of people. And so I think a lot of people out there today are wanting to make that jump. They're wanting to help. They're wanting to share their vision. They're wanting to really give back. And we know that there is so much power in that connection, doing things together. We're living in a world that's the most disconnected world at the moment. And so what advice do you have for some people who might be working by themselves, who might be feeling isolated right now, but are wanting to transition into holding space for others, whether that's a group or, what do you say to these guys?
There's so much there, man. Let me start with a story. So I was 17 years old, right? I was living in the Netherlands. My school career ended quite early. So it ended when I was about 14, 15. I was out of school. So no formal education at the time. And just not much hope. I was living in like a small town in this very industrial area. And
I wanted to work. I wanted to save some money to kind of fuel my travels and fuel my hobbies and habits at the time, which weren't always too positive. So I ended up working quite a blue collar job and tried to sort of earn a bit of money. And the job that I ended up finding was night shifts. So I worked night shifts. I was a forklift driver in the largest freezer in the Netherlands, right? Which is quite ironical. But this place was a huge, huge place. It was the size of a small town. And the whole place is minus 30 degrees, right? And the forklift drivers drive around on these little trucks, wearing these massive sort of like Eskimo type suits and 2 pairs of gloves. And anytime you breathe, like all this fog comes out of you because it's extremely cold. It's Arctic degrees. And so you're driving around, and I would start at 10 in the evening and I would finish at 6 in the morning, right? There was only me and another guy there who happened to be quite extremely addicted to drugs at the time. Like, no judgment, but it was just quite in my face the whole time. So it was a very depressing environment, right? I feel like in the 3-4 months that I was working there, like I aged 4 years. I lost all color in my face. And so when I went home at 6 in the morning, still shivering from driving around this cold freezer, people would start going to work, right? And you're watching the sunrise, so your sleep cycles are all the way off and you don't really have any human interaction, and all this to earn like a little bit of money, right? Anyway, there was a particular moment there when I just had this kind of deep realization when I saw the people around me that had been working there for up to 20 years, right? And again, this was the path that they chose, but I think it really scared me, and it really scared like that thing within me, right? Call it the daemon or call it just the spirit that's underneath it all, that realized that it could do so much more. And it knew, even though I wasn't really willing to admit it at the time, that like there was so much more out there for me. And I think that there was a moment there when I was just like, damn, like no way. Like I'm not going to end up, spending the rest of my days here. And that was when I made that sort of, faithful decision, like, fuck it. I hadn't saved the amount of money that I wanted to. I hadn't really organized myself in the way that I saw possible. I didn't know a single person, right, this side of the world. There was no family ties. There was nothing. I just ended up deciding to borrow 1,000 euros and just being like, look, it's not going to get any worse than this, right? So I quit that job and I came here. And the reason why I'm sort of giving some background is that there's been actually so many challenges along the way, right? There's been so many moments where it just was, had all the excuses to give up, right? All the excuses to just fly back home and things will be better and it'll be easier and there's government support and there's all these things you can rely upon. But there was a lot of motivation within that, right? So there was a lot of kind of deep felt like inspiration and this kind of drive to want more and to want a better life. And that helped and that was meaningful. But I think that the other thing that I would recommend people find for themselves is fear for fuel, right? So it's finding what don't I want, and it's learning to harness those key experiences that we all have in those moments and those realizations where, we felt like we hit rock bottom or we felt like shit, it just can't get any worse, right? And I cannot go back to this moment this time. That's fueled me more than the real inspiration to move on has, right? Because that's always been there and that always is there to today, the setting the goals and the striving towards beautiful moments and love and memories and friendship and community and all those things. But so these days I try to have a balance. I try to have a balance between, look, I really want to go somewhere. I want better things for myself, but I also know where I come from, right? And I use like an equal fuel for me to keep going. On the other side of that though, I think one thing that's been so inspirational to me, and I've shared this with people from time to time, is where we originally connected was probably, as you mentioned, it was probably about a handful of years ago. And I was working as a sculptor at the time. It's another long story. And it was a fantastic job, but a lot of it was me working in isolation, right? A lot of it was me just by myself. And I had all these fantastic ideas about, what I was going to do and how I was going to become a freediving instructor. And I was going to travel the world with Wim Hof and kind of, again, a lot of these beautiful ideas. But there wasn't really a community around for me to share that with. And there wasn't really just a group of like empathetic, heartfelt witnesses to my goals, to my dreams that could fuel them, right? And that could support me and that I could share these things with. And also that were giving me like the same type of feedback, right? We could grow together and we could plan together. And what you created at the time was really special. You simply said like, hey, I'm going to, I remember it quite clearly because I was getting really into bone broth at the time. Quite random, but I was doing a lot of, I was a vegan chef for 3 years, and I sort of started transitioning to doing a lot of gut healing work. So I was drinking a lot of bone broth, and I just recall, because it was kind of odd, I was having a bone broth a day, and then I met you and we had a conversation about bone broth. And I just was like, wow, like there's someone else out there that's also drinking bone broth at the time. This is kind of before it was a hype. And then you organized what you called a broth night, which was super random, but you said, hey, we're going to get together with like, say, 20 of these people that are all interested in health and well-being, and we're going to meet at my place. There's not going to be any alcohol. It's a Friday night. What we're going to do is we're going to drink bone broth, right? It sounds random as hell, but I was just like, wow, like that's actually incredible. Like, I wasn't really into going out and drinking at the time. Wasn't really my thing, wasn't really sort of finding much through there. So to come together with a group of people and to drink some bone broth was really special. And I just recall that first night when we're sitting down there, and the main topics of conversation were just like, well, what's your dream, right? Like, what are you going to do? And how are you going to change the world? And it was just like, fuck, I love this. And yeah, I'll never forget that, man. It was truly special to just come and share these stories. And as you mentioned, things have just gone exponentially better and bigger and more beautiful. And all the people that we met that evening, we're still connected with, and everyone's just on their own journeys. And I feel like we've all just been able to, like, at least watch each other grow and just support each other's dream, and just be there in the times when it's not so pretty as well, right? And be there to share, and be there to, be there.
Totally. Look, it's that was such a beautiful time where so many unique, different people came together so quickly. From literally in Sydney for many years, I was like, there's no community, there's no one out there. Like, I'm not having fun in Sydney. I want to move. And I was like, well, I got to maybe make my own fun, make my own community, build my own community here. So that's where it kind of started, and everyone's come together. And I was like, why can't we have fun without alcohol? Why can't we have fun without drugs? Why can't we have fun with just having some food and hanging out together? And that's where it evolved. And from that, there's been so many beautiful friendships and tours and fun thing that's happened, and really just the beginning for the community. And the world needs it more than ever, actually. And so what I'd love to know is, like, moving through and doing these events and facilitating and holding space, like you've seen people literally confront their fears and traumas, in real time, doing the ice exposure or this breath work. And so how do you understand trauma, and how do you understand healing? And like, how does someone actually bridge that gap? Maybe if they're not into breath work or not into the ice exposure, like, how can someone kind of start their healing journey, self-healing journey at home, we like to say, through your eyes, so to speak?
It's a huge question. I found that the language that I sort of read the world through these days, or the lens that I've come to wear, and I think that people that are interested in different health modalities, after a while you start to specialize, and you start to zone in on you kind of have to zone in on your modalities, because there's so much out there. And then that becomes your lens through which you meet people, and through which you perhaps work with clients, but also you receive other modalities, right? And mine has become breathing, which, like, don't get me wrong, I could never have seen it coming, right? So from, like, working with Wim Hof for 4 years, I've also worked with a guy called Laird Hamilton, and I've gotten really involved in this more therapeutic side of breathing recently, where we help people to overcome asthma and to overcome panic attacks and severe anxiety and things like that. So there's a whole spectrum of breathing exercises that I sort of incorporate and teach. But the number one driver to breath, the number one driver for life, in my perspective, and again, this is the lens that I wear, is actually the nervous system. So if there's one thing that's been really influential in my working with people, starting with just perhaps working with myself, as you mentioned earlier, starting with learning to, like, work with my own nervous system. And I say that specifically for a reason. I don't say heal my nervous system. I don't say change. I don't say reset. I say work with, because it is not something that we can override. It is something that is there for us. And it actually, it actually has a certain memory as well, right? So the nervous system is this kind of electrical highway that runs through the body that communicates the inside world with the outside world, right? And usually we think just about the brain doing that, but the brain actually extends down all the way to the fingertips and the toes, and that's our nervous system that sort of relays information, and it also stores memory. So it's a really brilliant apparatus, if you will. It's like a supercomputer that does so much for us, and it actually controls so much of the way we perceive other people and we perceive the world around us. So coming back to what I shared at the beginning of this chat, what I was talking about, you know, Johannes, the little boy in the Netherlands that was going through quite a traumatic event himself, right? Where there was an opposing figure that feels, you know, there was an opposing figure that was kind of coming down on me. And at that moment, the little boy had no way of protecting or defending himself. So you can kind of think about what happens in the animal kingdom quite a bit, where, you know, when a cat is sort of catching a mouse and the mouse tries to fight, right? And then it tries to flight and it tries to get away. And then it realizes that there's sort of nothing it can do. And what it actually does is it sort of feigns death, right? It shuts down. And that is actually a nervous system response that has carried through evolution. So it is a dissociative response, a feigned death response, if you will. And human beings very much have this same response within our nervous system. And it's actually known as the freeze response, or the dorsal vagal pathway of the vagus nerve. And so what happens in human beings in times of extreme trauma, and, you know, extreme trauma can be defined as many, many things, right? People always think about the war scenario. And that's another good example where a soldier in a war scenario feels like there's so much happening around and there's actually nothing it can do. And he sort of shuts down and has this, you know, oftentimes there's defecation that happens and the whole body kind of just lets go. The nervous system completely disassociates. Or the rape victim, which is also an interesting one, because the rape victim will often say afterwards, I could have done something, right? I could have fought back, or I could have responded. And the truth is that there was no such pathway, right? You could not. The truth is that the nervous system actually decided that in that moment, the most appropriate response to the traumatic event was to shut down, right? It was to disassociate. It was to temporarily leave the body, to defracture mind and body for a moment, so that there was no storing of memory, so that there was a numbing, there was a release of endorphins, and you quite literally left the building, right? So what happens within this response is it is a totally healthy and natural response. The thing about it is, though, that it can become, it can create something that we know as PTSD, right? Which has many, many different terms. And usually then like guilt and shame become associated with like the experience of what happened. And also we get stuck in this loop where we tend to start disassociating from life. And the reason why I use this example, as I can use many, is because it's something that I've learned to work with a lot myself as I've come to learn to work with my nervous system, right? So for my personal story, to take you back a little bit, one thing that used to happen when I was a kid is that one of the ways I got punished was I'd be on the bathroom floor, right? I'd be naked and someone would put a cold shower over me. Yeah. And so I'd be sort of forced to be on the ground and I couldn't quite run away, and I'd get this cold shower. And cold showers in the Netherlands are actually cold, right? So they're actually quite horrible, especially for a little kid. And this was just the worst thing. It was really kind of degrading and painful, and I started to hate everything associated with cold water. And I also started to hate anything associated with like larger male figures in my life. So that was one of my traumas, if you will, right? That was one of the things that even to this day, when someone that's older than me, or when someone that's sort of bigger than me or taller than me tends to speak down to me in a stern voice, like I can totally shut down. Right? I can totally just leave the body and I break out in sweats, and I'm just going on like, what the hell's happening here? And rationally, it makes no sense, right? Because I'm very well equipped to defend myself these days. I'm no longer a young little boy, but my nervous system still chooses that same loop. Does that make sense? I'm going on a bit of a rant here, but I'll try and turn it back around. So for me personally, part of the healing has actually, interestingly enough, has been to sort of make peace with cold water, right? And it's been to make peace and to overcome this exposure to this quite extreme sort of moment, right? And also to make peace with men in my life, right? And that just happened to be something that I could use like an extraordinary amount of energy on a day-to-day basis. And when I say use, I mean waste, just to hold up my walls of protection, right? Just to sort of keep myself safe so that no one could really see through and no one could really hurt me, right? So something we've been doing for a while now, but this winter it really came to light, was that I had a moment of insight and a moment of inspiration when I was in South America last year. And I sort of decided that what I really wanted to do and what I really wanted to sort of use like my platform for was to bring groups of men together. And so we did the first event in June this winter here in Australia, and we did 4 following that, where we bring a group of 30 guys. And you know, usually it attracts guys. So there's like a group of 30 men that comes in, and there's like a very confronting, like large amount of energy in the room. But we take them through this experience in the snow, where over the course of 3-4 days, we do lots of intensive breathwork experiences where there's opportunity for trauma release. So what happens within the nervous system when you trigger certain breath pathways is that you can actually relive some of those moments, and you can recreate the physiology that's associated with, for example, that freeze response. So you can go there, you can go to those moments, if you will, but then you do it in a very safe and supportive environment so that you can actually create the support that you needed at the time. Yeah. So in my case, I've been able to go back and I've been able to hold that little boy's hand, and I've been able to stand there and to protect him, which might sound like quite out there, but and this is just from breathing, right? So this is just from laying on the ground with a group of dudes and going through some really intensive breathwork exercises. Anyway, let me stick to the realm that we're in at this moment. And so we take a group of men through this weekend where we learn lots of breathing exercises. We learn a lot about how the nervous system works, how it moves throughout the day, but also we go out and we do these like extreme challenges. So we hiked up Australia's highest mountains in a pair of shorts in this really supportive environment. We go out at night and hike under the full moon. We've been climbing on these massive rocks and doing abseiling and snowshoeing and swimming in this like, you know, ice cold river where you literally have to like hack or chainsaw the ice open to get in. And really what I sort of came to find is that what was so fascinating is that all that work was amazing and all that work was really interesting. But again, coming back to what we've spoken about, probably the most transformative piece of it all was really to see guys opening up and to create the space for people to come and say like, this is what's on my heart, right? This is what I've been hiding. And this is what, like, these are my walls and this is my mask. And let me take it off for you for a moment. And let me show you what's underneath, right? And then to just be totally accepted in that and to just like have your opportunity just to share for a moment and just to see it was actually transformative as hell, right? So we literally see people walk in shells of humans, you know, shells of humans. You can see it. There's no color in the eyes. There's almost no spirit within. It looks like a broken individual, right? And over just 3-4 days of going through this work, just stand tall and just look like a mountain of a man. You know, and it's not me taking credit for it. It's just this incredible work and the power that it unleashes in people when we come together and when there's that level of camaraderie and that level of healing that can happen, right? That level of, being able to be the person that we couldn't be in our deepest, darkest moments, right? And being able to be seen as that and being able to be held as that and being able to, to show and reflect that to the world, I think is extremely powerful. So that was my answer today. Ask me tomorrow and I'll probably say things different. But this stuff absolutely fascinates me. So I'm happy to keep going down.
It's fascinating. It is fascinating. And, coming to some of your workshops and seeing the community come together, seeing, how much everyone is so out of their comfort zone, yet at the same time, they're so safe and supported. And so it's really powerful to see what unfolds as a result of people actually going to that place of uncomfortability and trauma or whatever it is, and then having a formula, I guess, to feel safe, to release it through breath. Who'd have thought something so simple, or ice exposure is so simple, but it's so transformative. And so these experiences, life changing, I can imagine. And you're now hosting these for people, holding that space, and talking about reflections, talking about shifts in belief systems, with the world and how it's changed since COVID. You've gone from having an events company pretty much to then shifting to doing other events, but still staying afloat and still actually thriving as a business. So what has been a belief system or habit or behavior change within yourself that's shifted throughout COVID for the better? Like, how has COVID actually helped you step into your full potential even more?
That's a really good question. Yeah, as you mentioned, the beginning of this year was probably the biggest for me ever, with like international travel and teaching events in Japan. And we had a whole calendar of travel lined up. I was meant to go to the Grand Canyon with Wim and have these reunions and do New Zealand multiple times. And it was just, there was one moment to the next where it kind of all shifted. And some of the contracts I had with working with sports teams as well, they all kind of just faded away, right? And everybody kind of went into protection mode, right? Everybody kind of went into like, oh, we'll see what's going down for a moment. And I actually did the same thing for a little while. I just went, okay, so we'll disband the team that we've been working so hard to create and foster for a moment, and we'll just kind of take a break and see what happens. But very quickly within that, I think I realized that this is actually a very inappropriate course of action, for a leader in times of distress, and also just for a man in the world, right? Is to shut down and to go into that protection mode. And so sitting with that for myself was quite interesting. And I didn't necessarily, there wasn't any government support sort of available for myself personally. So it was really just a question of, cool, how are you going to shift this for the best? And it was beautiful, man. It was really, really powerful. So I started with moving online. I think we all kind of went through that journey for a while. And I don't know if you can relate, but it got quite boring quite quickly for me. Like the first 2 courses I taught online were incredible. And it was just, well, you're just going to repeat this now. So I decided to move to the snow. Winter was coming here in Australia, and it was just like, well, people were saying there's not going to be a ski season here. There's not going to be anything going on. And I decided to move out there and just to kind of live and breathe what I've been talking about. And we made it up as we went. But it was the most powerful year I could ever have imagined. So the first 2 events we had in the snow, they were completely sold out. They were meant to be in June, and then everybody sort of got a refund, and they all didn't know what was going to happen back in April. But we just ended up putting them up anyway. And we just said to people, look, we're going to work this out as we go, and we're going to create a healthy, supportive environment during this whole lockdown situation, during all like unsureness, for you to come and have this experience. And we're going to do it relentlessly, and it was really sort of having to sit with myself and going, what is my truth in this moment, right? And what do I believe in right now? And hell, man, I've been preaching this message for years, going, look, like isolation causes inflammation, right? I said it earlier in this interview, and then here I am going and isolating myself in this little village just because there's some kind of virus going on. And so I think the question that you asked is, how has it changed me as a person? And I think the beauty within it was that there was so many sort of little patterns that came through, right? Where there was this little rebellion that came up, where it was like, oh, well, fuck everyone and fuck the government, and we're going to do it our way. And that, very quickly you sort of realize, like, nah, that's actually not the appropriate response either. Like, that's not a mature, integrative way of dealing with the situation, right? So that ended up moving into, okay, so how can I, as a business, and how can I, as a leader, how can I do this in a responsible way, where I actually have to completely change the way that I organize events and the way that I think about events, yet still provide this really powerful experience, right? And that was great. So, I mean, becoming a COVID marshal and doing all these kind of random things, and just like going and speaking to the different venues that we're working with, and hearing out their concerns. And, I think that was kind of a level of maturity that was reached there for me personally, where, it was very easy for me beforehand to just jump on a big stage and just like, talk and flow and scream and bring energy. And it kind of had to shift a little bit, because, the biggest thing for me is that you actually formed it up beautifully earlier in your response, which was that the transformative power of feeling safe. And with the side of the nervous system that I spoke about earlier, right, which is this kind of like this fractured extreme freeze response. If there is an opposite to that, or if there is an antidote to that, it is the total other side of the nervous system, which is actually this deep parasympathetic response. And the key trigger for creating a parasympathetic response, aside from all the health things, aside from all the healthy eating and sleeping and breathing and whatnot, is actually to feel safe in a social environment. It is a social engagement side of the nervous system. It's the deep tribal need within us to be like, you know, connected to other human beings, right? And so my truth within it was like, no, we need to create these safe spaces now more than ever, but also we need to do it in a mature way where people actually genuinely feel safe. And yeah, the pivot within that was amazing. And so we kept going. We did it for 5 months, and we did 10 of these experiences where, you know, there's 30 people coming down, and there's this whole thing we had to organize. So we had to create like little groups of 10 people because that was the max at the time. And so I had to bring in other facilitators, and a bunch of my friends that are ex-military from Queensland ended up coming down, and they were extremely helpful because of, you know, the military approach to moving groups of people and logistics and organizing. And so in the end, everything went like extremely well. No one got exposed to the virus and things like that, obviously, but also everyone just ended up getting exactly what they needed at the time, which was a safe environment where they could come and they could forget about what was going on in the world just for a weekend, right? So they could forget just for a weekend about all the outside noise, and they could really just tune into what excites them, and travel and adventure and potential and human connection, and like this very genuine level of interaction and dreaming. And it just felt like everyone's battery that had been depleted by, you know, all the external sort of concerns was just completely refilled and topped up by the end of the weekend. And again, you see people leave with like brightness in their eyes. Yeah, it was incredible. And then for myself personally, it only finished up a week or 3 ago when we did our last expedition, we call them. So we did 5 in a row, and I kind of had to meet myself again, like completely differently, like going back into the outside world, right? Moving away from the mountains, and sort of, you know, I ended up going on this beautiful trip with yourself to this wedding. And what a better place than a wedding to meet yourself, right? Because you show up as you don't show up as your job, and you don't show up as your car or as what you do, or as you know, how you put yourself forward. You're just you. And we're all just shining, being our best self, celebrating love and life. And yeah, I'm still working on how much has changed for me. It's a lot, but I feel like I've reached a new level of maturity throughout this all. So I'm extremely grateful for everything this year brought, and just keep it coming, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, throw it at us. We'll work around it. We'll all grow from it. Absolutely.
I agree. And so, yeah, it's what I'm taking from that is that as you know, were finding yourself, you know, shifting a business and shifting up your habits around, you know, doing community events and workshops, and you went into isolation, that was, it's kind of necessary, you know. It's because it was giving you time to reflect and actually go, hang on a minute, this is not in alignment. And then you've gone back out there and you've been resourceful, you've been creative, you've been imaginative, you're still bringing amazing people together and going deeper with your work. You know, I think a lot of people are stressing out or taking these external, you know, fears of COVID as a way of, oh gosh, I'm going to stop what I'm doing. You're going, no, I'm going to speed up and go deeper with what I'm doing. And you're like, bring it on, you know. And I think that's really inspiring. It's such a simple decision, but like it's creating, you know, a massive impact in your life and other people's lives. I want to shift it up a little bit and kind of ask a couple of rapid fire questions, if that's okay. So, and let's throw a couple of these at you. So I would like to know, you know, you've probably read a bunch of books, you've got all these amazing mentors. What would be your number one book that you'd recommend everyone? Like if this one book, the whole world could read this one book, what would that book be?
I think I've got it right here. It's a new one, and it's great. Of all the books I've read, this is just really powerful. It's actually just called Breath. Yeah, if you can get your hands on this. James Nestor is an incredible writer. He wrote this book before, which is also fantastic, about diving. And yeah, Breath.
Beautiful.
The New Science of a Lost Art.
Mm-hmm. We'll check it out. We'll have to get the link. We'll put the link in the show notes. If you had 1,000 Australian dollars, okay, and you had to spend it on biohacking, health hacking, quantum hacking devices, what would you spend this $1,000 on? Or supplements, you know, like if you just had this $1,000 you had to spend on investing in you, how would you spend it today?
I'd buy a chest freezer. It's probably one of the best investments I ever made. It was about 4 or 5 years ago. I was buying a chest freezer, and I think it was $400 at the time. There was an abundance of them on like, you know, Marketplace and Gumtree. And yeah, it's still going really strong. So I have a kind of a permanent ice bar installed at home, and it was only 400. So that's going. And just to have that opportunity every single day to kind of make that powerful choice for yourself to say, look, I'm going to expose myself to something uncomfortable here, and I'm going to do this, and there's no excuses. Like that in and of itself, you know, is a beautiful mental exercise. And then it not only, you know, the physiological benefits underneath, the mood enhancing benefits, the longevity enhancing benefits. So yeah, man, the power of cold water on demand, especially with summer coming up.
Amazing. So you spent 400 on a chest freezer. I love that. We have a house. And what would you spend the extra last $600
on? I'd probably actually get some tests done, just so that I could actually bring more awareness rather than just jumping in. So one test that I think is incredible is the Dutch test. Not just because it's Dutch, it's actually not Dutch. It's an acronym for DUTCH, and it's it measures sex hormones along with methylation pathways, and you pee on a strip 5 times during the course of 24 hours. And it's an extremely in-depth test that will give you like a very personal profile of your hormones. And for someone that's dealt with, you know, multiple courses of adrenal fatigue and burnout and just all the fucking like endocrinological things that we all deal with to a certain extent, I think that was extremely valuable to not only do that test, but to have a really good like naturopath or holistic doctor to talk to about that with. And then you can use the other $200 that's left on getting some like blood work done. So just finding out really what's going on underneath the hood and really getting a personal profile made up with a bit of a plan moving forward on nutrition and life. And I think, yeah, investing in like actually knowing what's going on and actually getting personal metrics made up for yourself. That's what I would recommend is rather than jumping into, because I've got, like yourself, I've got a host of biohacking devices, man. I've got like, yeah, I've spent a lot more than $1,000.
But actually, for the biohacking devices you've got?
Well, it's just a series of them. So it started with like personal measurement devices. I'm big into heart rate variability, biofeedback, and training. So I've got the Aura Ring. Then I also got the Whoop Band now, which is advancing a bit more. And I use another company, which is called HeartSure, that is like a 48-hour profiling device that measures your HRV live over 48 hours, and it gives you this really kind of detailed profile. So I do that every 3 months as well. And then HeartMath too. So HeartMath is more in the moment. It's a little sensor. Let's see if I have it here, that you put on your ear, and so it actually does in the moment like biofeedback training with heart rate variability. So that's kind of an avenue that I've really enjoyed, is really getting to know my HRV and like what influences it and why, and how does my nervous system sort of respond to stress. Aside from that, what else have I got, man? I've got the Dew, I've got the red lights. I absolutely love those. Use them on a daily basis. I've got a electrical nervous system stimulation device too now called the Nirvana. You put it in your ears. And I've got another one called Safe and Sound by Dr. Stephen Porges. So it actually uses resonance or sound frequencies to stimulate the inner bone membranes. And like, long story short, it will help your nervous system kind of down regulate. And some really simple things that I love too are like eye pillows. So I love just laying down and wearing an eye pillow and using sort of self massage balls and Theraguns and things along those lines to work on bodily tension as well. Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going. I'm so curious.
One big thing with COVID was as well, is that they shut down public saunas, and I was like, shut down everything, but you can't take away my sauna. So the moment it happened, I went researching and I went on the market, and yeah, my friends at Clearlight Saunas gave me this incredible dome sauna, which is an infrared sauna device
quite small and quite portable actually. So I've actually hauled it up a mountain once. I've properly hauled it up a snowy mountain to our location. So because I could not go a weekend without it during the snow. So that's been a lifesaver, man, because the mood enhancing effects of sauna use and heat exposure. So doing that back to back with the cold was really, really powerful. So having a sauna at home, or just going to like a public, you know, they're opening again now, either a Finnish sauna or like an infrared sauna, I think is really powerful as well. So I try and do that on a daily basis, is that like exposure therapy, right? I have a handful of like breathing devices as well that I use. Oh, I think my video just shut down.
I just stopped it a little bit because it was lagging slightly, but we can hear you perfectly. Audio is great.
Oh, okay, great. I'll cap it at that for now. Otherwise, I'll start to get boring once I start talking about my breathing kit. But yeah, so it's been really fun to play around with them, and I actually reached the point too where I was like, I think I'm going to stop buying new devices for a while, because I kind of got really hooked on everything, you know, and I love reading all the books and listening to the podcasts and the latest sort of science that comes out. And I've just really been focusing on like improving my breathing, improving my heart rate variability, and just working with those kind of basic metrics that I use there, and actually just improving them rather than launching into the next big investment and into the next big thing. Is like, cool, can I actually sort of, you know, improve on what I have.
And did I hear on the grapevine that you may have ordered a Healy?
Hey man, I got it. You got the most skeptical Dutch like head-based geek in the whole community. It took me about a year to get over the line. I think I was one of the first persons that you came to my house. We're doing ice baths, and you showed it to me, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, what have you come up with now? So I was resistant for a while, but just watching you guys do such beautiful work, like beyond the, you know, physical benefits and all the like undeniable beautiful testimonials that I've heard from people in the community, right? Like you just, there's no way. There's so much beauty and power that's come through like the work you've done with bringing this device out. But I think what really truly inspires me is just seeing how you're using this as a vehicle for community, and using this as a vehicle for growth and for empowering people, bringing people together. And man, I just couldn't sit on the sidelines any longer, you know? So I'm really excited to join the family.
Welcome aboard, bro. It's awesome. Yeah, you were like one of the first people. I was like, this is the most amazing biohacking device ever. You're going to love it. And obviously you were so entrenched in your work and all your retreats, so, you know, it wasn't a priority, but now it's exciting to see integrating it, which is cool. I'd love to know, like, and a final couple of questions, and I'll probably pass over to Brandon, just to kind of wrap it up and maybe open it up to the crew here and do a bit of a Q&A with some of the people here on the Zoom. I would like to know if you could just share one message via text message to everyone's smartphone in the whole world right now. And it was just like one simple message or quote or some passage, and everyone's attention, everyone's eyeballs were seeing this one message at one time globally. What would that message be?
I believe in you. Yeah. Hang it.
Wow. What makes you say that? What's behind that, bro? That's powerful.
There's been so many people in my life that have continued to believe in me, you know, from the times when I was a juvenile little teenager running amok and, you know, trying to just create utter chaos, and really underneath it all calling for attention. When people had all the reason in the world to abandon me, and I was even subconsciously trying to make them do exactly that. And there were people there that kept believing in me, right? And they kept holding on, and they probably saved my life in many different ways. And there's been so many moments like that across the line. And, you know, part of the beauty of, I think, what I do today and the way that I've sort of set it all up is that I'm still out there. Like, I'm still going to meet people in the flesh, and I'm still going. And most of the people that I like to work with are salt of the earth people, you know, the people that are out there in the trenches every day, that are, you know, holding up community and society and doing hard work and just putting other people first all the time, family people. And I just respect it so much when people show up and do something positive for themselves, like invest a little bit in themselves and take a bit of time out. And for the people that can't do that, for the people that don't have that resource, I feel for you. And I just like you to keep going. There's been so many times when I could have thrown in a towel, but there's always been people that believed in me. So I'd like everybody to have someone like that.
I can totally relate to that, man. 100%. The amount of people that have breathed belief into me and support, or just been there, it adds up. And some people don't have that, so that's beautiful. We're gonna shift this over a gear. Are you there, Brandon? Over in the Unlock Lab? Oh, unmute. There we go. Try that. All right.
I think you're cutting in and out, Zach, but amazing. It's really cool to see your ascension as well, and what you bring to the community. So thanks very much for your time, your energy, your presence, your knowledge and your wisdom imparting on this community. It's one thing I believe is you can't spell community without unity and unification within self. And some of the highlights of today that really stuck with me particularly is isolation creates inflammation, and use your fear as your fuel, and how prevalent that actually is in today's society. So I just want to wrap it up with through health mean to you? Knowing what you know.
Knowing what I know now, man, personal freedom, the personal freedom to make a choice. And I think we can't have wealth without health, right? I think we all have to meet that lesson at some point, when we're ready for it. But personal freedom to me embodies both abundance in physical energy, in perspective, in community, and the two first letters of wealth are we, right? And it's that wellness, and it's that you can have all the health and wealth you want, but if you don't have that community to share it with, what is it worth, right? How could it be wealth? And also, having the wealth without the health, it wouldn't make sense. It wouldn't make sense to have, material abundance, or to have stature in the world, or to have that level of composure if you can't actually, physically get up out of bed with a smile on your face and feel excited. And man, so to me, it's the realization that the two are very, very much interconnected and interlinked. And hopefully I think what's so beautiful about the work that you guys do as well, it's showing people that they actually work together, right? And it's healing this fracture that has happened, that the two are separate. But no, they can actually work together, and they can both feed into each other. So let's work towards that.
I love that, man. And just reflecting back to when I first went to your workshop, oh my gosh, it was it was the start of 2019, I think. It was when I first moved into the garage with Zach. But you highlighted something. The difference between wellness and illness is we versus I. And you separated it. That blew my mind, because I was at the time trying to go on my own health journey by myself. I was trying to do all the things by myself. And at that point I was launched into community, where I had no other option but to escape. I was literally living in a garage with 4 other people with no walls. And so, but that was the greatest time that I could reflect on, that changed everything for me, was completely integrated into a community. So yeah, that was something that really stood out for me over these past 2 years, is the difference between wellness and illness is just a simple, hyphen in between we and I.
Powerful, man. Powerful lesson we need to keep reminding ourselves of. And I mean, when we think about this concept of an advanced level of wellness, not just wellness to to wake up in the morning, not just enough wellness to keep our head above the water, not just about wellness to keep out of the allopathic system of medicine, but this really advanced level of wellness. Like it needs to be all the levels of the human experience, right? So we need to have like a wellness in our community. We need to have a wellness in our finances. We need to have a wellness in our interactions, a wellness in our relationships, a wellness in all these different areas. So for any one person to reach that, it's impossible, because the whole community needs to support him and needs to be right up there with him if you really want to live and uphold and maintain like that level of wellness. And I think that's a epic lesson, which, yeah, you guys have been inspirational in that. So thank you.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. And to many more incredible times ahead as we come to a close to this year as well. So thanks very much again for your time. I think this is wrap. What I love doing at the end of interviews is getting everybody who's on the call just to give us, you know, just say their thank yous and imparting words before we say our goodbyes. So if I can ask everybody to unmute yourself and just give your love who are on this call to Johannes for giving us his time, his energy, and his presence. Please say it now.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Johannes.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
Thanks,
Much love.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I completely enjoyed it. I loved it.
I'll say Dewey, Johannes. I've learnt one Dutch word. That was awesome, guys. Thank you.
There you go. There you go. There's the we. There's the well. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much. Tune into next session. We're going to be running this every single week. Thank you again, Johannes. We've got more special guests, special guests like Johannes coming up. And have an amazing day, guys. Much love.
Take care. Bye.
Yeah.